of Shrek, whether it be ironically or unironically. But what happens when you take a beloved franchise and cram it into handheld game consoles? Now, Shrek is no stranger to the world of video games. He had his original console debut, I believe, on the Xbox. And not to mention, we also had these two that I played when I was younger. Shrek 2 for the PS2 and Shrek the Third for the Wii. Now, I did play the Wii version, the PS2 version of this when I was younger, but I only have the Wii version now. But these are not the games we're talking about today. We're talking about the games that were on the Game Boy Color, the Game Boy Advance, and the Nintendo DS. Let's start with the Game Boy Color, shall we? Shrek Fairy Tale Freakdown. Oh, it's gonna be bad, isn't it? Well, this menu select is an indication. I don't like the way he's looking at me. Well, first things first, we gotta pick our character, and obviously I'm gonna go with Shrek. Oh no, Shrek, what did they do to you? Oh, it's bad. The controls are so stiff, the movements just don't work, and it just doesn't even look like a Game Boy game. This looks like something you'd be playing on an Atari. Like, it just doesn't look good or controls really bad. And what is that? What is that? No, no. Now, when I went on to my second fight, Pinocchio was harder. I don't know if that's just because I suck at fighting games or that the controls in this are actually extremely just bad. Even for something on the Game Boy Advance, the controls Game Boy Color, sorry. The controls just aren't that great. Like, they're legit it's just a pain in the butt to try to get anything right here. And when I jump and try to jump over him, it doesn't work sometimes, but then sometimes it does, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But just to say, this game, we're already off to a bad start. Now let's move over to my childhood game console, the Game Boy Advance. Now, I have the SP model because this is what I grew up playing. This isn't the exact same one that I had growing up. But playing this thing as a kid was so much fun, and I had this way into, I believe, the DS's lifespan, because I was still playing this when everyone else had a DS. I eventually upgraded to a DS, but I was playing this mostly. But let's see what some of Shrek's encounters on this game, on this console, if they were any better or any worse. Next up, Shrek 2 for the Game Boy Advance. And surprisingly, this was developed by Vicarious Vision, the people who later brought us the insane trilogy of Crash Bandicoot. It's kind of crazy. What did you guys do to these screen caps from the movie? You ruined them. They don't even look like they were... They just look like they were taken straight. I don't even know what to say. It turns out the game is a decent 2D platforming beat 'em up. It's kind of strange, but also kind of interesting at the same time. Shrek has multiple abilities, mostly just punch and pick up things, but it's very, very odd. I don't remember there being walking pumpkins in Shrek 2. Is that part of the Snyder Cut? You go through a bunch of different platforming and beat 'em up moments, and it's a simple, and I could actually see myself completing this if I didn't have to do it for a video. But there's also another interesting thing about this. When you get halfway through the stage, you beat the stage and move on to the next stage. But the next stage is Donkey having to meet up with Shrek in that one part, which is extremely interesting. It's a little jarring having to go the opposite direction, but a lot of platformers have done this, and it's an interesting concept, but there is a huge problem with this game. When you die, you have to start all the way over. Luckily for me, I wasn't that far into the stage. I was pretty that much at the start, but it's annoying knowing that if you die, you have to go all the way back. What if you die right at the end? It's really something that I hate with video games when they do that. It's really, really annoying. Going with our next game, Shrek the Third on Game Boy Advance. Let's see if this is a downgrade or an upgrade. It's the same game. It's the same freaking game. Does someone want to tell me why there's a penguin from Madagascar here? Gloria the Hippo too. It's just a crossover now, huh? And this is the only thing that's new to me, is you play as Puss and Donkey, but you have to switch back and forth between them, but you get halfway through the freaking stage as Donkey and then have to switch to Puss or vice versa. Now this was probably in Shrek 2, but I didn't play further enough to even get to where Puss comes into the game. But are you freaking serious? This is just more backtracking where you just have to go through things you've already gone through, which no one likes to do, especially in a platformer. No one wants to go back through what they've already done before. Like, even, there's not really much to do. You're just going through a bear with no enemies. It's legit. Just makes absolutely no sense. Jump on over to our next game, Shrek Super Slam. Super Slam. It's a Smash Bros. Clone, isn't it? Okay, what did you do to Shrek's face? You choose a character. I decided to go with Gingy, and you get a story for your character that I guess they're like telling stories by playing cards or something, which I don't really understand, but why is Gingy green? Why is Gingy green? Why are these controls so bad? It's a Smash Bros. Ripoff. It's legit. It controls bad. Like, there's some little platforming moments that show up where some parts of the stage fall off and you have to try to platform back through to actually fight. And a lot of the hits aren't very good. And a lot of the hitboxes are just complete garbage. And who the heck am I even fighting here? Is that supposed to be Fiona? Clearly in the opening she was still Ogre, but her dress isn't green. Who is this? Who am I fighting? This game is bad. And yes, I lost my first fight, but this game's controls are complete dog crap. There's not much more to say about this game. Alright, let's just hope our next game can give us something better. Next up, Hassle at the Castle. Okay. Why do these stills look better than the ones in the Shrek 2 game? Is this going to show us that this is actually going to be a more competent and more fun game to play? Why does he look like that? So apparently this game is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, which kind of follows the first movie. So we guess this is our movie based on the first game, I guess. Because I don't really know, but the controls are pretty decent. Like, the fighting isn't the best I've ever seen in a beat-em-up, but it's fine. I can't get over these weird chibi designs, but besides that, it controls fairly decently. It's probably one of the best we've played so far. Next up is Shrek Wreaking Havoc. We got these chibi designs again. Thought we were done with these, but honestly, this is probably the best one we've played. It's very similar to the last game, but it's more level-based and actually works a lot better. And it seems to have more competent enemies, and playing as Fiona as in the first level is really interesting. And this even has its own little story going that takes place after the first movie, which is kind of makes this a sequel to the last game. And that's really nice to see a game like this do that. Like, it's super interesting, and I like the design seem to be a little better this go around. I didn't get to see what Fiona looked like in the other one, but this one, her sprite design and these enemies, even though a lot of them feel really weird and not very Shrekky, it's just, they work. They really work, and it's a surprise. And you even wind up fighting a boss at the end of the level with Pinocchio, which is a pretty decent boss. I can't figure out how to fight him in the second part when he becomes legs only, but it's actually, so far, best game we've played so far. All right, so the last game was pretty good. Let's see what the next game has to offer us. It's the same as the first two games we played. It is legit the same game as the first ones we've played, except two major differences. One, I accidentally put the dialogue on the wrong language, and this is just Puss in Boots stuff. Like, yeah, maybe I could say the platforming is better in this one than it was in the other ones, but like I said, I didn't get to play as much as Puss. It took me a good minute to learn that there was a double jump. Mostly my fault, since the fact that I was playing with the wrong language on, but it must have been understandable, I guess. But it was still fairly decent. I couldn't have seen myself playing fully through this, but it's just more of the same. Like the enemies are the same. The only thing that's really more decent is the more precise platforming, which I think works in Puss in Boots' favor, and I imagine in the Puss in Boots stages later in the other games, it's pretty similar. So I don't get why this is a whole nother game, which from what I could tell, the story, it literally just follows Puss on his journey up until he meets Shrek. I don't know. It's weird, and don't know why it has to exist, but it's fine, I guess. It's competent. The controls are exactly the same as the other two games, and it's fine, I guess. Next, we got Shrek's Swamp Kart Speedway, which is basically Mario Kart, but with Shrek characters. Not as good controls, not very much way to tell like what the power-ups do, or I've had a lot of trouble with this one. It's definitely not the worst kart racer I've ever played, but it's definitely not the best kart racer I've ever played. It's fine. It's nothing like to get angry about. It's nothing to want to throw my Game Boy across the room for no reason, but like it's definitely not anything I'll be revisiting. Why isn't Donkey one of the base racers? You have what looks like Goldilocks and a gnome. Like why isn't Donkey in the base? He's a main character, and Goldilocks wasn't even a character in the freaking. I don't know. I guess maybe that's something this game and this game had in common, with just throwing random characters in there that really weren't part of the game in the movie in the first place, but whatever. Next up is Shrek Smash and Crash Racing. Now, I've heard that the console version of this is really fun and is actually a pretty good game. This is not the console version. This is awful. Like, the controls, I cannot even get a grasp on. The turning is so bad. I can barely move, like, without going all over the place. It's legit, like, the sprite work is fine. Like, I'm not gonna lie, but, like, a top-down racer has always never been my favorite thing anyway. But the controls for this are so bad. Like, it's just not good. Like, you can barely move in this game without going all over the place. It makes absolute, and I barely did any of playing this game before I turned it off. It is now time to hop on over to the Nintendo DS and see what great games that holds for us. Next up, we have Shrek the Third for the Nintendo DS. I don't even know where to start with this. the game, the story, the gameplay, it's just so weird and doesn't even resemble any of the other versions of this game. Not the PS2 version, not the Wii version, and definitely not the Game Boy version, because this thing, one, it does its whole own side story from the movie's plot line, which sounds like something that would have been cut from the movie, because, like, yeah, that's stupid. And, like, why center a whole game around this? And what is up with it just doesn't work. And this the intro sequence takes way too long, and it's just, I don't even know I haven't even gotten to the gameplay yet, but I don't even know what else to really say. And then we finally get to the game itself, and for the life of me, this is some of the weirdest gameplay we've had of any of these games. There are forced touchscreen controls that the whole game is basically centered around, which I don't get why. At least when they brought this over to the Wii, from the PS2 version and everything, it was still a beat 'em up, just with motion controls, which is also annoying. But this doesn't serve any purpose, besides, like, oh, look what we can do with the DS stylus and the touch screen. No, you have to switch between all the three characters, and Donkey's not even one of the characters. We have to play as freaking Arthur, Puss, and Shrek. Donkey has to stay back for some dumb reason, story-wise, turned him into a parfait, something. It's really dumb. It's really dumb. It's probably the one I played for the least amount of time, and it's just not a good game. I can get that from just a couple, like 5 minutes of the start of playing this game. Like, it just doesn't work. Next up, we got Shrek Super Slam for the DS. I don't even know where to start with this one. It's basically, but in all the ways except for gameplay, it's the same game as the Game Boy version, but I don't know if it's worse. I feel like it might be a little worse. It took me more to get a hold of the controls with this one than it did with the other one, and just a lot of the decisions made with this game, and I don't get a lot of what I'm supposed, like, of the fighting and how the fighting works in this game. It's very odd, and it took me a minute to get things down, and I don't even think I got them down still. It's not very... I didn't understand how to use the top screen very much, because it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Like, it just felt weird, you know? I don't know really how to explain it, but I didn't have fun playing this. And the final game we're going to look at today... Oh, let's go. Shrek Ogres and Dronkies, which is already sounding like a best time ever. But we start out with a cutscene that's fully voice acted, surprising for a DS game for around the time this came out. Most of the games, especially licensed games, didn't do this, but it's pretty well voice acted, I won't lie. Like, they used basically the voice actor you see for all the Shrek games and all that. But it's trying to set up a story for a game that doesn't really need one. All this game is taking care of Shrek and Donkey's kids. Which, when I got to the gameplay, I immediately tried to do something and turned it off. Now, this isn't Shrek's entire handheld. I'm pretty sure I looked through pretty much most of the Game Boy Advance games. I think I might have done them all. I don't know for a fact. Don't quote me on that. I think that was all the Game Boy Advance games. And there's only one Game Boy Color game that I know of, at least. But there were a couple DS games I left out. There's a Shrek Forever After DS game. There's like a mini game one that's on the DS that I didn't play. But I think those are the only DS ones I missed. I could be wrong. But definitely if you want to play some Shrek games, I would recommend sticking with the console games, specifically these two are the only ones I've played. But if you have a PS2 or a Wii, these are on both of those. Well, this isn't on Wii, but this is on PS2 and as well. But if you have either of these consoles, I'd recommend you playing these games. Because I actually enjoy these two, unlike the other games that we talked about today. But does it change my opinion on Shrek? No, it makes me respect him a little more, since the fact that he was a big laughing stock in the handheld market before he was a meme. So he was already a joke back then with his handheld games, because most of those games were not very good. Does that change my thoughts on this thing? Actually, a little bit it does. Looking back, there was a lot of shovelware on here. And maybe one day I'll go back and look at a video and go look at a bunch of shovelware or a bunch more licensed games that were on this thing. But that's really all I can say about this for this video. I had fun filming it. I'll say that. But that's all I can really say, is that I had fun filming this. The rest of the time, a lot of this was torture. A lot of these games were bad. But if you guys like the very first video of me looking at multiple games like this, it was a lot of fun. If you have any other games you want to do, mostly I'm going to do simpler games for stuff like this. I don't want to go into too much crazy stuff. I'm not going to look at freaking like bunch of big AAA games on this. I want to look at things that are simple that I can talk about in bulk with multiple games. So this is basically all I have to talk about. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!